The story is set in a modern world, where dungeons and monsters appear. One night, a 40-year-old man held his retirement party. His name was Lim Dae-in. He was a B-ranked hunter, so the party wasn't that big. He was just drinking with some friends, and he received some gifts. But he still had a lot of money saved up, and the cherry on top were a few buildings in his name. All he had to do was to retire and spend the rest of his days in peace. But the next morning when he opened his eyes, he was in a small, dirty, and familiar room. It was the cheap apartment he used to stay at in his 20s, and no matter how many times he checked, it was still 2018, when he had nothing. Out of agony and rage, he threw the phone at the wall and screamed his lungs out. He asked what he had done wrong, and at that moment, he noticed that he still had the watch his friend had given him. His friend said that the watch was actually a relic of the Byron continent's legendary mage, the Heidel. That night, before sleeping, he played around with the watch, and it's probably the cause of his regression. Then suddenly, the landowner's son started banging on his door, saying he was too loud and demanded that he open the door. The landowner's son was a good-for-nothing delinquent. Every night he had karaoke parties on his own and drank. Furthermore, before Lim awakened, he would always steal money from him. Thinking about all that pissed him off. As he opened the door, he smiled. Because the jacket that bastard was wearing was expensive and made from monster leather. The landowner's son told him that the noise Lim made caused him psychological damage. He was thinking of calling the police, but if Lim were to compensate him, then he'd pretend nothing happened. He tried grabbing his watch as compensation, but Lim brushed him off. He immediately hit him in the face, making his nose red and bleed. Then once again he grabbed his head and hit it with his knee. He asked him why a grown-ass adult like him kept stealing from someone as young as him. He took his jacket as compensation for the things he stole from him. As the landowner's son was crawling on the ground like a bug, Lim packed his things and vacated the room, leaving that place once and for all. Lim came back to 2018. It was a time when he had just awakened during the fall at a construction site. He had a hard time because of the knee injury he suffered back then. But now he was healthy with strong legs to boot. So it was time to start his awakening. He was a B-ranked hunter who managed his mana for 20 years. So awakening on his own was a piece of cake. After awakening, he was surprised to see the state of his feeble body. Then his stomach started growling from hunger. So he was looking for a restaurant. But suddenly a gate opened. 2018 was a period when the gates opened randomly, and detecting all of them was very difficult for the government. Everyone in the area was panicking. Because monsters called red-spotted wild dogs came out. Lim started looking for a weapon and saw a crowbar at a construction site. He grabbed it really fast and saw a little girl surrounded by a pack of red-spotted wild dogs. He rescued the girl and confronted the wild dogs. As the dogs charged at him, he hit them multiple times with his crowbar. After breaking its jaw, he sent it flying with his strength. The rest of the dogs were on guard. And at the same time, Lim's stomach started growling. Then when he looked at the dogs, his mouth started watering. He thought they looked very chubby and delicious. In his past life, red-spotted wild dog stew was really popular. So he decided to end the fight quickly and charged at the dogs. His body wasn't as strong as before. But his knee was really great. With his enhanced mobility, he fought the dogs and beat them up one by one. But there were too many of them. So as an additional weapon, he used his watch as a knuckle duster. The watch was surprisingly durable. Then he was surrounded by the rest of the dogs. There were 10 left. At that moment the police arrived at the scene and took care of them. Then a man from the government approached Lim and thanked him for saving the citizens. He asked him for his name and affiliation for the rewards. He introduced himself as Lim Dae-in and said that he wasn't affiliated with anywhere yet. Also, he only awakened a few hours ago. So he isn't even registered as a superhuman either. He couldn't receive the rewards at that time, so he gave him his phone number and bank account number. Then he gave an excuse saying he was busy and ran from the scene. As he was running from the scene, everyone was already talking about him. He went to a restaurant to fill his stomach. The food was delicious and calls for recruitment were already coming to his phone. Because it was a time when everyone was desperate to recruit superhumans. On top of that, everyone saw how great he was, despite having awakened not too long ago. He then started searching the internet for more details about that era. 2018 was only 2 years after the first gate appearance. It was a time when superhumans with mana and special traits began to replace police and when guilds began coming to power. So when a new superhuman appeared, there was tight competition to recruit them. Then he appeared in the middle of that. Also, he had knowledge from the future that no one knew about. So he decided to take advantage of it all and retire within 3 years. Lim was happy to hear his phone ringing with calls and messages, but then a man in a fancy suit approached him. He introduced himself as the manager of the Royal Family Guild. He came to recruit him after seeing his hunting video. Then suddenly a beautiful woman interrupted him. As she was about to introduce herself, another man came from the Warrior Guild to recruit him. Then suddenly it became a crowd of people trying to recruit him. So Lim told everyone to quiet down, and if anyone were to say another word he would not join their guild. He proposed to go to a more suitable place to talk. So they went to a fancier restaurant. Lim told them that he wouldn't waste their time and went straight to the point, asking them how high they could go for the signing bonus. Then the manager from the Royal Family Guild told him that the contract had a non-disclosure clause, so he proposed that he talk to them one by one. As he was about to explain more about the Royal Family Guild, Lim asked him to have a safe trip back. He said that he didn't have any plans of signing a contract with him, because he knew that in the future their shitty guild would merge with another and they have terrible management. Then he asked the rest of them how much they could offer. Someone offered 1 billion won, then a woman offered 1.1 billion, and the man from the Warrior Guild offered 1.2 billion. Thanks to their fierce competition, the bid kept increasing. Suddenly the beautiful woman offered 2 billion. She was the White House Guild manager, Baek Youngwi. Lim knew that although the White House Guild was founded only recently, in a year it would become one of the top 3 guilds in the country. So he told them that except for Ms. Baek, everyone else should leave. But just in case, they should leave their business cards with him. Baek Youngwi complimented him, saying he had great skill, despite being an average person just yesterday. Lim thought to himself that it was an elegant way to tell him that she had done a background check on him. Ms. Baek complimented him some more and told him they would like to nurture him as the future of their guild. As he read the contract presented to him, he wanted to add in a few clauses of his preference. As he wrote down his preferred clauses, Baek was dumbfounded and thought that he was joking. Lim told her that he wasn't joking. His conditions were 4 days of work a week, guaranteed end of work shift on time, and the right to refuse missions that take a long time. Baek Youngwi looked at him with a threatening face as his conditions were ridiculous. She asked him what made him so confident in himself, and Lim replied that in return they wouldn't regret signing a contract with him. So Ms. Baek got up and told him that she would return with a revised contract in a few days. Before leaving she winked at him and said they should have drinks next time. Lim was indifferent to it because he knew that she was the guild master's daughter. Then it was time to register as a superhuman. He went to the disaster management center. However, the person in charge was absent, so the worker was troubled. As they went to measure his abilities, Lim hid his special traits, because in that era a magical power meter had not been invented yet and he had no intention of letting anyone know of his traits in his current life. He passed all of the tests with flying colors and got his superhuman certificate. Then on his way out, he saw the person in charge, Ju Sangwook. According to his knowledge of the future, that man was a troublesome person, so he quietly and swiftly left. As he left, the worker informed Ju Sangwook of the super rookie Lim Dae-in. After that, Lim went to a contaminated area. It is a completely sealed off, ruined, and abandoned place because of the monsters. But that place would become a gold mine when the dimensional gate to the Gaia continent opens up. It's a fantasy world where swords and magic exist. So a year from then humanity would meet a new civilization, and in Korea, only one gate would open in the contaminated area he was standing on. So Lim was determined to buy that no matter the cost as soon as he got his signing bonus. Once the gate opened he would make a fortune. As he was unpacking, he heard a scream in a different language. It was the language of the Gaia continent. So he activated his special trait stealth. Thanks to these abilities he was forced to participate in stealth and assassination missions in his previous life. So he decided to hide it in this life. As he ran towards the scream he found a little girl surrounded by thugs. She was about to make a magic fireball to defend herself, but she failed. The thugs thought if they sold a superhuman they would make a fortune. After seeing that, Lim knew that the girl was a dimensional refuge and the thugs were from a criminal group called the Red Snake. Before then, he didn't know that they were involved in human trafficking as well. Lim got down and rushed towards the thugs with a knife, instantly killing their leader, and before the rest could even react he killed them swiftly. The girl was scared. So Lim spoke in her language and asked her if she was from the Gaia continent. The girl was shocked that he could speak her language, but then her stomach started growling. So he asked her if she liked meat. Lim served her several servings of food and the red-haired girl was grateful. She promised to repay his kindness. Then Lim asked her if she crossed the dimensional gate alone and the girl said yes. Then he asked her about her hometown. But she refused to answer. So he asked her about her age and lots of other things. But he couldn't find out about anything. The girl asked for his help since she couldn't speak their language and was bad at magic. She had nowhere to go. But babysitting as a kid was hard, so Lim refused her. But he gave her a choice. He would teach her their language and some basic knowledge. In return, she has to do chores and follow his orders. She happily accepted it. As Lim told her to wash the dishes, the red-haired girl introduced herself as Lily. When Lim heard that, he was reminded of a fire skill user named Lily. The monster who would burn half of the city to a crisp 10 years from then. She was from the Gaia continent. She was one of the 6 disasters, the Fire Witch. Furthermore, the Fire Witch was kidnapped by a criminal organization. On top of that, their looks were identical. Which means, he just stopped one of the disasters from ever being born. The next day, Lim went to a market with Lily. After the first gates started opening, the food crisis caused people to start eating monster meat. However, people didn't know about the monster meat's nutritional value. The ingredients that you couldn't buy in the future were readily available. Its supply was higher than its demand. So Lim bought a lot of it. After that, he took Lily to a clothing store. He told her to choose and she chose a beautiful dress. But Lim didn't buy that. He bought her a tracksuit. Lily was shocked, and Lim said that having her wear beautiful clothes in that waste ground didn't sit right with him. After going home, he started cooking the meat he bought. He cooked an abomination, calling it his signature dish. When Lily asked him if it was edible, Lim said that healthy foods were meant to look like that. Then Lily smelled something delicious. It was the chicken he bought to eat later. Lim let her eat it on the condition that she eat both dishes. After finishing their meal, Lim went to practice his martial arts. He was practicing the Great Sea Mind technique. It boosts the amount of magical power and allows more flexibility in its use. He trained using that technique before his regression too, but the mana increased at a faster pace than he expected. No matter how hard he tried, it never went that well. So he concluded that it was probably because of the nutritional food and young age. At that rate, he could become stronger than he was before his regression. Then for the next 2 days, he continuously ate the abomination called Lim's signature dish. The result of it was an incredible increase in his mana capacity. At that moment, White House Guild manager Baek Youngwi called and informed him that she convinced the leader, but in order to accept his conditions, Lim had to take a test. Lim said that a test was absurd, but he would accept it on one condition. After that, they went to the White House Guild HQ. When they arrived, Ms. Baek asked who the red-haired girl was. Lim introduced her and said she was his half-sister who was raised abroad. Then when Lily asked who Baek was, he told her that Ms. Baek was someone who would give them money. Then they went up the elevator to meet the guild master. The guild master was Baek Chang-soo. He was polite but also a very powerful superhuman. Lim's new condition was that if he were to pass the test, then they would have to double the contract sum. The guild master pressured him with his overwhelming mana. Any other superhuman wouldn't be able to say anything under that pressure. But that didn't include him anymore. He countered the guild master's mana with his own mana. The guild master was impressed. He immediately offered to increase his signing bonus, and if he were to pass all the tests, he would give him 20 billion won as a signing bonus. Lim was happy and asked to start the test right away. His first opponent was a young swordsman, but he was part of the guild's first unit. When Baek Younghwa asked Lim which weapon he would like, he said that his watch was enough. The young swordsman was baffled, thinking that he was arrogant even though Lim only awakened recently. The young swordsman's trait was speed. His speed would increase the more he moves around without resting. As soon as the match started, the young swordsman rushed towards him. Lim thought he would charge at him, but the young swordsman was smarter than he looked. He started to build up his speed by running in a circle. After witnessing his incredible speed, everyone thought it was over for Lim. Then as soon as the young swordsman tried to attack him, Lim turned around and softly punched his face. Even though it was a light punch, the impact was stronger because of the young swordsman's speed. After seeing that, everyone was impressed. Guild Master Baek complimented him and thanked him for holding back. If he didn't control his strength, then the young swordsman's head would have gone flying out of his body. Lim looked up at the audience and smiled. Then Lily asked him why he was smiling like a pervert. After that, the next match was about to begin. It was against the team leader of the 6th team, Yong Dae-hoon. He was the best tank in the guild. Lim recognized him, as he was the guy who was secretly sending killing intent his way. As soon as the match started, Lim charged at him. He punched with his knuckle watch, but Yong Dae-hoon blocked it. Then he attacked with his sword. Lim dodged and Yong thought it was his chance. He pushed with his shield, intending to make Lim fall to the ground. But Lim was skilled in martial arts thanks to his previous life experience. He sneakily dodged and counterattacked with a move called Eagle's Claw. Yong blocked it with his shield and they exchanged a few moves. Then Lim attacked with another move called Steel Mountain. The impact of that move was so great that it sent Yong flying. But his physical endurance was no joke. Yong didn't receive any serious injury, it just made him want to fight more seriously. Lim wanted to hide his true strength and use it in the third test. But he realized that Guild Master Beck was sly and matched him up with Yong so that he couldn't hide anything. Then Yong proposed that if he were to win the match, Lim would have to join his team and serve under him. So Lim had a counter-proposal. He said that if he won, then they would have to make him a team leader, and he would recruit his own team members and complete missions independently. Guild Master Beck agreed to his terms, but in return, if he were to lose then he'd have half the signing bonus and double the contract period. Lim said he was fine with it and Yong asked him if he thought he could win against him. Then Lim said, and I quote, "You like Baek Youngwi, don'tcha? The killing intent earlier was also because of Youngwi's interest in me, and you're thinking of acting all high and mighty by crushing me in this match, aren'tcha?" According to his knowledge of the future, Yong Dae-hoon would cause a huge controversy in the near future. He went through all sorts of humiliation and was kicked out of the guild. Then he provoked him further by telling him to clean his room and calling him a pervert. Yong was enraged. He activated his trait, the bull mode. It increases his physical abilities, but he loses all reasoning. As Yong charged at him, Lim gathered mana in his hand and used one of the great sea mine techniques, Lightning Fist. The impact from it broke Yong's shield and sent him flying. The audience couldn't believe that a newbie knocked out Yong. But Lim was also drained from using that move. He used the mine technique to temporarily replenish his strength. When he opened his eyes, Youngwi called him 7th team leader and congratulated him. Lim liked the sound of that. According to the contract, he would receive 6 billion won if he passed the first 2 tests and 20 if he passed the third. But his last opponent was none other than Guild Master Beck. Lim was shocked, thinking to himself that they wanted him to fight that monster. He gave up the third test without hesitation. But Guild Master Beck said he would pay him 20 billion if he just lasted 5 minutes. But Lim told him he couldn't fight anymore. Then Baek Youngwi with a threatening face said they should finalize the contract. So they went to the office to finalize it. The terms of the contracts were ridiculously good for Lim. Beck asked him how he would recruit members for his team. Lim said he would recruit each member one by one and he wanted to sign a contract with someone at that moment. It was Lily. He told Lily to make a flame as big as she could. But she was hungry, so he offered her 3 chickens. Then Lily excitedly got up and immediately created a giant fireball, shouting 3 chickens at the same time. Youngwi was surprised that his little sister was a superhuman too. On top of that, even though she made such a big fireball, the surroundings didn't burn. Her control reached a frightening level after teaching her for a few days. There was a reason she became a disaster in the future. Then Lim started negotiating for Lily's contract, but Lily was impatient for the chickens. The fried chicken-eating Lily scored a whopping 5 billion won contract for her signing bonus. After that, Youngwi gave her a tour of the White House Guild's building and management. But Lim was neither surprised nor impressed. Because in the future everything will be more advanced. As he entered the weapons room, he picked 2 daggers to use and a vest to carry those. Youngwi was about to end the tour, but the guild master came looking for them. He said he was sorry to do that to him on his first day, but there was an emergency, and all the other teams were out in the field. So he asked Lim to go to the site. Lim thought he would get the rest of the day off since it was his first day. He reluctantly asked where he had to go. A gate appeared in the middle of the city and large quantities of giant snails were coming out of it. The hunters at the scene were having a hard time clearing the smelly snails. Lim said it was a shitshow. Youngwi told him that his task was to capture 3 live snails because they needed samples of a new monster. Giant smelly snails were weak, but they explode on impact and let out a bad stench. Lily was nauseous from the stench. Then Lim told her that he blocked his sense of smell with mana, and then Lily almost instantly learned how to do the same. Then Lim told her to stay on standby while he went to capture samples. He saw that no one else caught a proper sample yet because they exploded. Then he noticed a small slime on a tree, so he kicked it and the slime fell. Then he used a move called Tai Chi to spin the slime. It safely knocked out the slime without exploding. Lily was impressed to see that technique and wanted to learn it. But Lim refused and asked her to pay 100 billion for it. Lim quickly captured 2 more and contacted the control room. Youngwee was surprised that he finished so quickly. At that moment, 3 strangers came up to him. They were hunters from various guilds. The green-haired hunter was from the Black Hound Guild. He was his superior in his previous life. At first, they were complimenting him, but Lim saw through their act. He told them to stop blabbering and to get to the point. They told him that they had a hard time capturing slimes because they exploded upon impact. But Lim said that he didn't care, nor did he want to give them any of his slimes. The green-haired hunter was furious, but the other 2 said they should use their words and politely asked Lim to help them out. Youngwee told him to refuse them and that she would make an official complaint. Then Lim dropped the bag and told them to take it, if they were capable of taking it. At that point, all 3 of them were enraged. So Lim told Lily to light everything around there on fire to fluster them on his signal. Lily wanted to burn them instead. But he told her that it would be troublesome if someone died, so she should just light the surroundings on fire. As they were about to fight, the gate started to glow. An enormous slime came out of the gate. It had fast regeneration, a hard shell, and hundreds of huge long tentacles. No hentai though, get your mind out of the gutter, people. Anyway, Lim took this chance to leave the scene and went to their car to drop off their samples. The hunters couldn't pierce through the snail, and the snail dominated over them. Youngwee asked Lim to get at least 1 hit in on the snail, so they could claim ownership of the loot. But Lim told her not to worry, because the way they were fighting, the hunters would never be able to beat it. The slime was playing around with the hunters as if they were mere annoyances. The hunters were struggling, while Lim was watching the spectacle. He told Lily they would watch until all of the hunters leave. A hunter from the Black Hound Guild named Wang Guho was running away, but the snail captured him. He couldn't use his abilities and his colleagues abandoned him. Then Lim came forward and saved him. He told him that he wasn't using his abilities properly and that if he wanted to learn how to use them properly, then he should come to find him later. After that, he told Lily to start. Lily created a giant wall of fire surrounding the enormous snail. Baek Youngwee told him that he was being too rash and the support team would arrive in 5 minutes. But to monopolize the loot, Lim ignored her. According to his knowledge of the future, the snail's weakness was fire. The fire made it slower. Lim asked Lily to cover him and charged at the slime. As Lim cut off the tentacles, Lily burned them. That halted its regeneration. Then when it lost most of its tentacles, it went inside the shell and started the recovery process. Even the entrance was closed. But he was prepared. He brought sturdy needles from the car. Since the shell was incredibly hard, the only way was to target the weak point in the shell where it was soft. Lim took his time to hammer in the needles in the soft points. Lily was bored and the people outside were wondering what was going on inside. Wang Guho was wondering if the words Lim said were true. A few minutes later, he was done hammering in all the needles. Then it was time for the final step. It was to target the center. So he gathered up his mana and used his strongest technique, the lightning fist. The impact blew away Lim. The shell cracked and the snail died. Using the lightning fist twice in one day was too much for him. So Lily helped him up. Then it was time to get the loot since the meat from it can make a nutritious mana stew. Then Youngwee contacted him and said the support team had arrived. Lim told them to wait and hurriedly started to butcher the slime for the main loot item. After he was done, he told Lily to take down the fire. Everyone present was shocked, especially the hunters who had been bullying them before. Lim said it was a fight with his life on the line. He made it look more dramatic than it actually was. That night, they decided to hold a fried chicken party. Lily was happy as her mouth was watering, and Lim was enjoying it too. After a satisfying drink, he said, and I quote, "Fuck. This is the taste I live for." Hearing that, Lily remembered that he said that word every time they ate. So she excitedly said, and I quote, "Fuck." Lim was shocked, thinking that people shouldn't say anything they wanted in front of kids. He told her that it was a bad word and she shouldn't use it. Lily asked her why, and all he could say was that it was a bad word. Then Lily asked her why he used a bad word when eating chicken. And that is all for now. Find out more about this series in the next recap video. Let us know in the comments the manhwa or manga you want us to recap next.